Well, it's Charles on the pole. Again, another of those amazing laps. As I said yesterday, he's right on the edge around Barcelona in that Ferrari. Just an incredible lap right at the end. Having made a mistake on his first run in Q3, a little bit along the lines of the aggression we were talking about yesterday. He got a bit wide in sector 3, just coming out of that long right hand. It got a little bit wide. As a result, he's a bit late getting the car straight again for the last chicane. Asked too much of the car going in and lost the back end. That was the first run gone. So all the pressure on Charles Leclerc then, because he would have qualified P7 or something with that lap time. All the pressure then to get the pole. And he did that. He did that with one of those beautiful perfect laps. Still that incredibly aggressive approach into turn 3, which, as I said yesterday, I think is going to be a problem for him in the race tomorrow. It may not be an issue in terms of whether he's going to win or lose the race, but it'll certainly add to the problems that he's going to have in keeping his tyres relatively cool under pressure from Max Verstappen, assuming, of course, he continues to hold the lead into turn 1. Still driving in that very aggressive way, but really good through turn 4. I've got to say, that long right-hander, beautiful to watch there. It just seems to be turn 3. It's a bit of an anomaly, and also quite aggressive with the way he's driving the car. But, you know, we've seen Charles make a lot of mistakes in the build-up to a perfect race before, and let's see if they do it. The big thing, as Charles said after qualifying, is how they will be, obviously, in race conditions. It's going to be really hot tomorrow, as hot as it was today, perhaps even a little bit hotter, and how they will manage the tyres. We've seen recently that Red Bull do a much better job after about lap 12, lap 14 of any given Grand Prix. Max seems to have his tyres in better shape, and then he makes the pass relatively easily. So what is the situation with Ferrari? Well, the good news for the Ferrari fans out there is that, as I said yesterday, they did a lot of homework yesterday, and today, just to rub it in FP3, when everybody else was still working on setup, running soft tyres, going out, doing a run, worried about the traffic. The two Ferrari drivers, just brilliant to watch, were out there, both of them, running fuel, doing long runs. So let's have a look and see what they did there. I've called this Ferrari fuel runs, because they were the only, Magnussen was out there right at the end, doing a bit of fuel, and I think maybe Valtteri Bottas, but this was the impressive thing. Look at that. Charles Leclerc did, what, 5 good laps, but it was enough to get a feel for where the tyres were going. Carlos Sainz, even more, 26.8 on his last lap. And to have both cars out there running fuel when everybody else is setting up for the pole, I think shows the mindset at Ferrari now. They've really learnt from the mistake made in Miami in not doing that. And this sort of circuit where, and I was joking at Miami, you know, maybe the thing of Monaco, got to get the pole. This is a circuit where obviously the pole is really important as well. It's very difficult to overtake in Barcelona, or indeed it has been in years past. We will wait and see with bated breath how the 2022 Formula One cars look around Barcelona. If you like, this is the first real acid test, because if we've had any boring Grand Prix in the past that have led the fans en masse to say, we want more overtaking, it's races from Barcelona, because it is that sort of circuit. It's a chassis-orientated circuit. You see a lot of teams qualifying with the two drivers next to one another. And beyond that, very, very difficult to overtake. But in theory, now it's going to be easier. So the two overtaking places obviously are going to be in the DRS zones, which is the main pit straight and on the back straight. And if you don't do it there, you're going to be struggling, because there are lots of tight corners where you can just hold your line, and there's no way in the world in a big Formula One car, 2022 spec, big heavy Formula One car, you're going to find a way past. So not only have Ferrari done their homework, but Charles Leclerc, right at the end, under pressure, put in that amazing lap to take the pole. Let's just have a look in dissecting that lap. These are the overall best sector times from qualifying, amalgamating qualifying 1, 2 and 3. And you can see there that Charles Leclerc quickest in both Sector 2 and Sector 3. George Russell quickest in Sector 1. We'll get onto that in a minute. And Charles right up there, 22.0 in Sector 1. So what does that mean in terms of the lap? Well, interestingly, Barcelona is pretty even in terms of what the three sectors demand, because Sector 1 obviously begins at the start-finish line, so there's quite a lot of top speed there. Then there's braking, you could almost say medium speed, left, right, and then that lovely turn 3, turn 4. So it's pretty medium speed, fast in a straight line, low drag will give you a good time in Sector 1. Sector 2, you've got the hairpin, you've got the downhill run, you've got that sort of piff-paff bit at the bottom, as the French would call it, up into the very, very quick turn 9. So it's a bit of a combination of the two. And then sector 3, you've got the long straight and then all the tight bits at the end. So an interesting lap in terms of looking at various performances. But Charles Leclerc right on top of it. Interesting to see that Max Verstappen on those qualifying sector results, you wouldn't have thought, wow, that guy's second on the grid. But there he is, a very good average between the three. And I think that tells the story of Max Verstappen's weekend so far. Now, Max was really quick in the first phase of Q3, the last run, obviously when they're down to the top 10. He did a 19.0, and at that time, Carlos Sainz had done a 19.4, and you thought, wow, yeah, this is Red Bull finally coming out and showing how quick they are. 19.0, what would he do on his second run? We never saw it. He never finished, he never did a quick lap on his second phase in Q3. He said, I've lost power, I've lost power. He didn't look that worried after qualifying, and he did talk about DRS as an issue. So, and Lewis Hamilton also had a DRS issue this morning as well in FP3. But a 19.0 in the first phase of Q3 was a very quick lap compared with Carlos Sainz 19.4 at the same time. And as I say, Charles Leclerc on his first run lost it before the last chicane. So yeah, a few unanswered questions there in terms of Max Verstappen, but I think that kind of sums up where he is. Very good average, and despite not having that last run, front row of the grid for Max Verstappen. Also interesting, I think, to see George Russell. Let's talk about Mercedes now, because they were really quick. And again, George always had the slight edge over Lewis Hamilton. In the end, it came down to sector 3. He was really good on sector 3, whether it was just the way he was managing the tyres and not being that quick in sector 2 and having a little bit more grip than Lewis in sector 3. Maybe that's what they're analysing right now in the Mercedes debrief. But for George Russell, really impressive sector 1 as well, quicker than anybody through sector 1, but it was very, very close there. You can see Max Verstappen also did a 21.9, Lewis 22.0. So yeah, there was a little bit in it, but not much. But the significant thing was 27.8 for Lewis in sector 3, and George Russell 27.6. That's 0.2 in sector 3 between those two Mercedes drivers. That's much more than George Russell being a faster driver than Lewis Hamilton. That is something to do with time management. So Lewis will be reasonably happy with that. The two Mercedes not looking too bad, really. First time we can say that in terms of the race, going into the race tomorrow. They're certainly well away now from the midfield, which was led again by Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. Very good recovery job yet again after that problem he had yesterday. Didn't do much running yesterday, but really quick. I mean, 19.6 for Valtteri in the Alfa, really good lap. Bearing in mind Lewis did a 19.5. So Lewis and George basically up there with, dare I say it, with Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull. And that's got to be something that will make Mercedes very happy. There was a time in Q2 when George did a 19.4 and Lewis had done a 19.7 when he was actually purple. He was quickest. And wow, Mercedes there. Then Max did a 19.2, Carlos Sainz also did a 19.4. Little bit of normality restored. But Mercedes almost there, you could say, obviously lacking in a couple of areas. But let's look again at these sector times. If you look at sector 1, George right there, no dispute about that. Sector 2, you've got Lewis 29.5, same as Carlos Sainz and just slower than Charles Leclerc. And in sector 3, that would be the area where you'd say, well, Charles Leclerc 27.3, George 27.6, Lewis 27.8. What's going on there? What is happening there? I suspect, maybe too simplistic this, but in order to get rid of most of the bouncing, as there is still some bouncing in the Mercedes, but in order to get rid of most of it and make it drivable, they've had to take downforce out of the car. And in taking downforce out of the car, they're going to be working the tyres harder. And certainly Lewis, at the end of his quickest laps, you could see the back end was sliding much more than, say, it was on the Sergio Perez Red Bull, let alone the Max Verstappen Red Bull, or indeed any of the Ferraris. So, apart from when Charles was spinning, of course. So I think that's what we're seeing there. We're seeing Mercedes have got the car almost bounce free, not completely. They've had to get rid of downforce in order to do that. Now the key is, how do they get the downforce back without recreating the bouncing? That's obviously what they'll be working on over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And it'll be, months probably. And it'll be interesting to see what the car is like around Monaco as well, because bumpier there, probably, and it may not be such an issue for them if they have got a loose back end, and also two really quick drivers as well, of course, so that should make a difference around Monte Carlo. So just to sum up then, in terms of the comparisons, the key comparisons from sectors in qualifying today: Charles Leclerc quicker than Max in sectors 2 and 3. Carlos Sainz also quicker than Max in sectors 2 and 3. So that means Max is quick in sector 1, and he's going to be obviously very strong in the race, therefore, because we've got a DRS sector in sector 1, and then he's got that lovely uphill section in which he could pull away if he does get in front with DRS. And then looking at George Russell, quicker than Lewis in sectors 1 and 3, and Lewis quicker than George in sector 2. As I say, that's probably a tyre management thing we're seeing there. Let's have a look at some of the other results as we go down. Sergio Perez yesterday did a very good journeyman job to be where he should be, really, just backing up Max in everything he's doing. He's there or thereabouts, and looks like a genuine point scorer, that's for sure. Lewis Hamilton will be bittersweet day for him, another one, because the car is making progress and he could rightfully feel, wow, we're making progress, this is a good thing. But again, it will be annoying him like crazy that George Russell is always that little bit quicker. There was a lovely little cameo this morning in FP3. I was talking yesterday about, how Lewis, it's a difficult time for Lewis, more difficult than you can imagine for a 7 times world champion, always to be slightly slower than his young up-and-coming teammate, also from the same country of birth. And that is a difficult thing for Lewis. And we saw a little bit of that coming out this morning when Lewis got on the radio. They'd obviously just given him some sector times of another driver where he was losing out on all 3 sectors. And Lewis came back and said, so is that where I'm losing out to, and he didn't actually say George, he said to, or is it where I'm losing out to the fastest guy? And the engineer came back and said, well, it's where you're losing out to George. And Lewis said, I don't want to know where I'm losing out to George. I want to know where I'm losing out to the quickest guy on the track. And I thought that was a really interesting moment in the life of Lewis Hamilton. And I totally get it. I totally get that he doesn't want to be in any way comparing his driving with that of George. I totally get it that the engineers are looking at the teammate, and if he's slower than the teammate, you want to see where he is slower. But it also gives an insight, I think, into Lewis's mindset. He's constantly thinking of the win. He's constantly thinking of Leclerc doing that in the Ferrari. This is what Lewis Hamilton's going to do in the Mercedes, and that's his yardstick. And he doesn't want to know about George Russell. Why would he? That's the problem. That's the problem Mercedes have. And I was thinking before I started recording, I was thinking, imagine if the Mercedes, this year's Mercedes, was half a second a lap quicker than the Ferrari and the Red Bull at every circuit. Imagine now the mayhem that would be going on with George versus Lewis. Because they're slightly under the radar, because they're not fighting for a win yet, it's calm enough. But, I hope Toto knew what he was doing when he fired Valtteri Bottas and replaced him with George Russell against Lewis's wishes, because it would be no different if George was in the Red Bull. It'd be exactly the same situation. If George is in the Ferrari, it'd be exactly the same situation. So it's not just Lewis can't handle the pressure. It's you put a really quick driver alongside one of the established ones, and it's always going to destabilize the team. Yeah, so that was a really interesting insight, I thought, into everything that's going on at the moment with Lewis and George. So just looking at some of the other results, Valtteri Bottas, as I say, great result for him. Kevin Magnussen, very good recovery too, looked very strong all day, 19.6. He and Valtteri did run a bit of fuel at the end of FP3 as well. Daniel Ricciardo, good job for McLaren, upheld the McLaren team today as Lando, who now concedes that, I said yesterday he was looking a bit messy and scrappy in the car. He now concedes he's not actually feeling that great, but he was very unlucky today because he did a really good lap in Q2, 19.9, which was half a second quicker than Mick Schumacher, had also done a very good job. I've got to say, 20.4 for Mick, bearing in mind he lost all of FP3 when the rear brakes caught fire, so he didn't have any setup time at all. But then Lando had his lap time taken away at turn 12. It didn't even look anything out of the ordinary at all to my eye. So I don't know what was going on there, but they deleted his lap time, which meant he didn't get through to Q3, which was, very unfortunate, really. I think, you would have seen Lando up there, sort of probably very near Valtteri, between Valtteri and Kevin. I would have thought P7, P8 around there. But Daniel did a good job nonetheless. And Mick Schumacher got into the top 10, as I say, not having a lot of running, but a very good job from him as well. A notable absence, even from Q2, was Fernando Alonso in the Alpine, who had horrendous traffic. I mean, how he got himself into a position where he had no lap time and 3 seconds to do it at the end of Q1 and traffic everywhere, I've no idea, but he did. It looked like Lando, actually, that he had a lot of, that he was held up behind, but he didn't get out of Q1. So that was incredibly disappointing for Fernando in front of his home crowd in a year when he's starting to look really good, or was starting to look really good in the Alpine. So yeah, disappointing day. And not a great day for Alpine in general, because Esteban Ocon was incredibly slow in Q2 as well, had no chance of getting through into Q3. Others that didn't get through, the two AlphaTauris as well. I said yesterday they were, maybe slightly better on this circuit, but not really. Nothing like as good as the Alphas, nothing like as good as the Hasses around here. And another damp squib today was Aston Martin. I mean, this team supposedly has got all these geniuses there now. They've taken them from other teams. They've completely restructured it all. New team, new this, new that. New upgrades for this race, and neither of the drivers got out of Q1. So yeah, a lot to be desired there. Sebastian Vettel expressed a comment at the end of that when he was told that he hadn't got out of Q1. He was absolutely astonished. And I think that kind of shows a little bit of where they're going. I mean, they don't seem to know where they are at the moment at all. It seems so odd that a team that's had such a good history and such a good pedigree, and now in this new ownership, it just seems to be, struggling like crazy. Anyway, we'll see tomorrow. I wonder if they'll use their patented start from the pit lane strategy we saw in Miami. Oh no, I shouldn't make jokes like that. Anyway, just a reminder that we'll be going live on the Twitch platform from the beginning of June, on June 1. So everybody out there can start asking lots of questions and giving me a hard time. That's starting from there, and that'll be all the live streaming stuff. We'll continue to do all our video work here on YouTube, and looking forward, of course, to tomorrow, to doing another one after the race. See you then.